Most people believe happiness is something you should force, that if you think positively enough, reality will eventually obey. But Carl Jung warned about something unsettling. He believed that forcing light doesn't eliminate darkness, it pushes it underground. And what we refuse to face within ourselves doesn't disappear, it waits. In the modern world, we are taught a simple equation. Positive thoughts create positive outcomes. Fear is labeled low vibration. Anger is something to suppress. Sadness is treated like a failure of mindset. At first, this feels empowering, but over time, many people begin to feel strangely disconnected. They are doing everything right, yet something inside them feels increasingly wrong. Carl Jung saw this pattern long before modern self-help culture existed, and he believed it was not a spiritual awakening, but a psychological imbalance. The reason positive thinking feels so powerful is simple. It gives the ego control. When life feels chaotic, uncertain, or painful, the idea that your thoughts alone shape reality is comforting. It removes randomness. It removes tragedy. It removes the unbearable idea that some things cannot be controlled. Jung understood this temptation deeply. He believed that belief systems often form not around truth, but around psychological relief. If a belief makes anxiety disappear, the psyche clings to it, regardless of whether it is complete. This is why doctrines promising total control spread so easily. They offer certainty in a world that does not guarantee it. But Jung warned, what comforts the ego often distorts the self. Jung believed the human psyche is a self-regulating system. It seeks balance the way the body seeks equilibrium. When one side of the psyche is overemphasized, the opposite side quietly grows stronger. Jung called this principle enantiodromia, the tendency of extremes to reverse into their opposites. In other words, when consciousness becomes too one-sided, the unconscious responds, not gently, but forcefully. Jung used the term shadow to describe everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. This doesn't mean evil, it means unlived, unexpressed anger, unadmitted fear, unaccepted desire, unspoken grief. When these parts are denied, they don't vanish. They relocate. They move into the unconscious, where they begin to act without our awareness. The more we insist on being only positive, the more autonomous the shadow becomes. Modern neuroscience quietly supports Jung's intuition. The brain is not designed to suppress emotion, it is designed to regulate it. When emotions are chronically ignored, they do not disappear, they intensify beneath awareness. Studies show that emotional suppression increases stress hormones, disrupts emotional processing, and reduces self-regulation. In simple terms, what you refuse to feel begins to control you. Jung described this long before brain scanners existed. He understood that repression creates pressure, and pressure always seeks release. From Jung's perspective, the problem isn't hope or optimism. The problem is exclusion. When fear is forbidden, it becomes obsession. When anger is suppressed, it becomes resentment. When sadness is denied, it becomes numbness. This is why Jung warned that moral and spiritual perfection often produces the darkest unconscious reactions. The psyche does not accept censorship. What is denied inside returns outside as fate. This is why people often describe sudden collapses. A calm person who unexpectedly explodes, a spiritual seeker who burns out, a disciplined life that suddenly falls apart. These moments feel like failure. Jung saw them as compensation, the psyche restoring balance after years of internal pressure. This is why so many people feel confused by their own reactions. They say things like, "I did everything right. Why do I feel empty? I tried to stay positive. Why am I exhausted? I manifested success. Why do I feel disconnected from myself?" From Jung's perspective, this is not failure, it is compensation. The psyche restoring what was ignored. Often the collapse arrives suddenly, a burnout, a crisis, a loss of meaning. But it didn't begin suddenly. It began quietly, the moment the shadow was told it had no place. There is something Jung understood that most modern teachings completely ignore. The shadow doesn't just live in emotions, it lives in decisions. When parts of you are repressed, they don't stay psychological, they become behavioral. You start choosing the wrong relationships, not because you're unlucky, but because unacknowledged needs are steering you. You sabotage opportunities, not because you're afraid of success, but because parts of you don't believe you're allowed to have it. Jung believed that many of the patterns people call bad luck are actually unconscious loyalty to what was never allowed to exist. This is why forced positivity is so dangerous. It doesn't just distort your inner world, it quietly reshapes your external life. When anger is denied, it leaks out as passive aggression. When fear is suppressed, it shows up as procrastination. When grief is avoided, it hardens into numbness. And the most disturbing part is this: the more unaware you are of these forces, the more convinced you are that you're acting freely. Jung had a brutal line for this. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Jung's solution was never repression, it was integration. To integrate does not mean to act out every impulse. It means to make the unconscious conscious, to feel anger without becoming violent, to acknowledge fear without being ruled by it, to sit with sadness without drowning in it. This is the path Jung called individuation, the slow becoming of a whole human being, not happier, but real. Before moving on, consider this carefully. What part of yourself have you been calling negative? Not because it harms others, but because it makes you uncomfortable. That part may not need elimination, it may need understanding. Jung believed awareness itself is transformative. What is seen no longer needs to sabotage. Jung never promised happiness, he promised wholeness. He believed that a person who integrates their darkness is calmer than one who chases light. Not because life becomes easy, but because reality becomes honest. Forcing happiness creates imbalance, integration creates stability, and stability, Jung believed, is the foundation of real strength. If you want to explore these ideas more deeply, you're in the right place. Drop your comment below and let this journey continue.